Oh, hello. So it seems like a lot of the stories that I like are very rare or they get canceled. And as a result, I feel like we should sit here and create our own story. So I'm going to speed run the creation of a fantasy world slash story. I want you guys to tell me what you think about the world in the comment section below. And maybe in the future, we can do this live and speed run the creation of a world together, put our ideas together to create our perfect fantasy world, the world that we'd like to see people creating things in, moving around in, and stories emerge from. So I've got a whiteboard here. Most of this is going to be off the dome, so there's going to be some procrastination. This isn't going to be a super fast process, I don't think. But let's begin. So first, we need the actual world itself, right? And to keep things simple, I think this should be an Earth-like world, right? It's going to be 3 times the size of our planet, but we need a name, or at least we need a working name. Obviously, the first and easiest that come to mind are like Terraria, or just staying basic and calling it Earth. But I think I got the name. Well, no, I don't want anything human-based. That's too boring. I was gonna say Humana at first, like the insurance company. But I want a name uh, that also includes the fact that there's going to be some kind of magic system on the planet. I don't want this to be like an overpowered magical fantasy, but I do want some magic. So maybe something with an M. Magana. Yeah, Magana sounds cool. We're gonna go with Magana. It sounds magical. It sounds human too. It sounds like a combination of the two. So the world is going to exist within this planet called Magana, right? And of course, it's going to be heavily inspired by. I've never actually used this tool before. Create freehand drawings. Okay, there we go. So I can create drawings. I've used this tool, but I've never used it for creative storyboarding where I might have to draw something. I can't draw either. But our world's going to be called Magana. Wonderful. Wonderful. And I want this place to be 3 times the size of Earth. And the reason I want it to be larger than Earth is because I feel like a lot of stories quickly max out on the size of the planet that they exist on. Like our main character quickly becomes bigger than the planet that they're on. And I feel like if we have a planet, and obviously this is about to be rough, right? This is about to be rough. But I feel like if we have a planet that is too small, it's way too easy for the main character, to become too big for the planet. I've seen that over and over and over again. Like, oh, this humongous planet suddenly becomes nothing, and our main character is at the top of it, just because the planet itself isn't large enough for the magic that they're using. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, most worlds, or the normal Earth, is not big enough for the 10 of us, the 100 of us, the 1,000 of us. It's not big enough to fit a proper sized magical population or world that potentially has, some physics breaking magic in it. There has to be quite the range of people, and quite the range of things to interact with if this is going to be real, right? If there's going to be a world that can contain magical people. And obviously, what I probably should do here, actually, is make this. How do I get away? How do I get away from this? Okay, so I should probably make this a rectangle. That way we can have like a realistic depiction of a circular planet that's being shown like a map. Yeah, that instantly looks better. It's instantly a better idea. That way we can, space things out a little bit better. And of course, it's a planet, so we can be kind of free with its sizing. I want this little city to be the center, because often, whether it's realized or not, the main character is the center of the Earth. And I think a literal representation of that by... Oh no, what is that? A literal representation of that by putting our character literally in the center of our planet, at least to start, isn't a bad idea. So we're going to ignore physics for the moment, because physics don't even really exist in most magical stories. I think this will be a heavily science-based story, right? But we'll make explanations for that. Trust me, the size of this planet, because this should be like the South Pole, right? It should be pretty cold down here. Even the tips of these countries or nations should be pretty cold, potentially Russian levels of cold, where if this is a normal planet, it would be very difficult for people up there to live. But we'll explain all that in the future, right? We're just building a rough draft of what our planet and what our universe is going to look like, what our character is going to exist within. Okay, so we've got Magan. It's 3 times Earth's size. Of course, this is the ocean, right? Who knows? We might change the ocean in certain areas. And I just had this random idea come up. Maybe we make the ocean like a very important part of the world. Like, obviously, we've got a bunch of land, a big land to ocean ratio. I might have to decrease the size of some of these continents. But this will definitely be where our main character starts. And so not completely the center of the world, but clear enough. Maybe we'll make the most powerful magical users, or the most of them be concentrated here. This will basically be our United States. But I want some system where this ocean has a strong connection to the power of the users on the planet. Let me think about how that could work. Okay, got it. So this is a relatively unadvanced world. Not to say that they don't have basic things, but I don't want it to be ultra advanced. They don't need nuclear bombs yet, right? That's where one of our main characters comes in at. But let's say that your on keyboard, your proximity to the ocean or water changes your power. Which is why, despite looking like it, remember this planet is three times the size of Earth, so these are absolutely humongous continents. But because the size of this continent, a lot of people on our starter island are going to be closer to the ocean than others, meaning that they should at least have some power. They should have some power bond. They shouldn't be weaklings. Oh man, I didn't mean for that to happen. So there we go. Generally speaking, the academies and a lot of leading nations, right, are going to want to have their headquarters, or at least their military bases, close to the coast, because the coast results in their ability to have way more magical power. Magical powers are powerful in this, but we don't want this world to be filled with overpowered people, and we definitely don't want our main character to instantaneously max out or get close to the power that resides in some people's bodies in this world. So making it this large allows them to have a lot of time to develop without sizing out, because that happens so quickly. You so often so quickly have a character who outsizes the world that he exists in. That's cool and everything for a power fantasy. It's not good for developing like a deep story where he can genuinely have connections to people. So we've got our magic system to a certain degree. We've at least got the source of it. It's going to be the ocean. We've got our Earth. We know that this is going to be our starting planet. The next question is, what races are going to inhabit the planet? What races will exist? Are there going to be magic-based monsters? Monsters that come from magic. Just spawn in because of magic. I think I'd like to take an opposite approach. I don't think I want, these monsters who are just ridiculously weak and pretty much exist to only be farmed by the people on the islands and within the planet. I think I'd like to have a few monster species. So we won't determine what species it's going to be yet. But I'd like to have a few monsters that are ridiculously powerful. So we've got a few species, right? We'll have the generic orc. We'll have the generic dragon. And if you think about it, in most fantasy animes, mangas, stories, the monsters are pretty powerful, but our main character is always so powerful, and adventures are always, cut above the rest of the cloth, that they don't seem powerful. They end up looking like normal mobs, normal quality, just normal people, really, when it comes to them going against the adventurers in terms of them getting defeated. And they ultimately just start getting farmed, and they become side characters. They become unimportant. So one, I want these to be intelligible creatures too. Maybe they have their own nation. They aren't necessarily existing solely for the purpose of attacking other people. This doesn't have to be an ultra hostile Earth or planet. Magana doesn't have to be ultra hostile, because that's another thing. When you have planets and these monsters are instantaneously the bad guys, they exist literally just for to be a plot device. Oh, there's this monster village, I have to go attack it. I want to be to where these are intelligible creatures, and if you decide to go attack one of their civilizations, you are actively not committing a crime. Let's say that they're second to humans, but you are actively doing something that's consciously evil. You have to make a pretty evil decision to go out and hunt monsters, because one, they're pretty powerful. They aren't just idiots. You actually need to be somebody to fight them. But also, they aren't evil. They aren't just going out and, R-wording, they love doing that in anime. Everybody, they love making the orcs and the goblins do that so they appear evil. They're just existing like other humans on this planet. They have civilizations, things they care about, things they pursue, and because of that, I feel like it'll make the adventurers have to find some other way to level up, some other way to advance. And the main reason I want that, the main way I want that to happen, is oceans, of course, because they gain power there. Academy, so they can advance their own magical power. Innate ability, of course, naturally what you're born with. And for that specifically, I want to introduce or add, Mashley's line system. So I really like Mashley's like tattoos. Oh, the more tattoos you have, essentially, the more tattoos you're born with, the more powerful you are as a being. And we can go above, their limits and add way more. I just really like that idea. It's just a super cool thing to implement. Like, oh man, this person's got this many marks. And with marks being able to be hidden, like you don't have to instantaneously know how powerful a person is, allowing for certain psychological games to be played pertaining to how powerful you are. And of course, we can instantly make it illegal. We can make it a war crime to lie about the amount of marks that you have. Because this world lives in relative peace, there has to be some justification of that. Of course, it's just a, normal type of Earth like we live in. The reason is because military power has gotten so strong that countries are afraid of attacking each other, for the most part, right? For the most part. But I'll also say that it's because there are regular games to keep your territory. So, similar to the Olympics, but this game is going to have the added stake of determining whether or not you keep your land, or the planet as a whole decides that you're no longer capable of holding on, and the land that you do have should be given to somebody else. So that's quite a lot fleshed out, right? Quite a lot fleshed out in this world. Um, I guess I didn't go too far into the races specifically. I guess I can do that. I can try to do that. I don't have too many fantasy races in my head right off the bat, like I feel like a lot of people would have. But of course, humans. As a matter of fact, since I'm being so uncreative or I can't think of it, this is what I was thinking about: drows. I want drows to be a conscious species. And again, because monsters, are very powerful, and they aren't just evil beings. Oh, but just because they're a monster, they're evil. That ignorant system. Monsters is going to be on this, just monsters in general. And because of that, we'll add the orcs. I want all the ones that people act like are the absolute worst. I want the goblins. You know, I would say slimes, but they don't have enough of a existence. Doppelgangers. So basically, we're mixing our monsters in with our normal humans. And you aren't just going to be able to instantly say, oh man, that person's a monster. Oh, this is a monster. It's time for us to see how powerful the main character is. No, no, no. He might actually lose his life, and he should actually think twice about attacking. Elves and dwarfs are probably enough for me to add on here. And we're going to create our own species, because we don't want this to be a generic anime. Dwarves. But elves and dwarves are awesome, just because their lore is kind of understood by everybody already. For whatever reason, it's understood that, elves specialize and love trees, and dwarves are very good at crafting things, which is going to be valuable for this story, because I kind of have in my head right now what our main character is going to be like, or main characters. But let's create one more race. I like doppelgangers too, so we're going to add doppelgangers in there. That just adds a lot for the story to potentially dwell upon. Next, what is our next race going to be? Of course, we need dragons, and this list will be ever growing. I mean, there are millions of microorganisms and species and races on the planet. Don't need too many in terms of the ones that are actually going to be running things. But I'm not even thinking about the ocean. I didn't put anything in here for the ocean. There definitely has to be at least one actually just evil, terrifying creature in the ocean. But I'll think about the ocean specifically later. For now, what were we gonna call this other race? Let me know what y'all are thinking in the comments. Let me know what y'all think we should call this next race. Ooh, let's just throw a curveball in there. We'll change it up, as we develop it, or if we need to. But let's call them the Solians. And these people are gonna derive extra magical power from the sun. So they inherently are very powerful. We're going to make this race pretty small. They're going to be pretty rare throughout the continent. But Solians in general have the ability to inherit magical power, not just from the ocean, but from the sun too. Also, making this ocean based is just going to give us a lot of opportunities for like cool surfing scenes and cool stuff with the ocean, cool stuff on ships. Maybe it'll be a normal thing for academies to have their own yachts and ships so they can take their students out into the ocean so that they can get closer to the source of power, further away from society, further away from land. Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. I like that. So to recap so far, water-based world. Quite a few races. Monsters aren't inherently evil. There's a peace that's maintained just through magical power, just through the threat of other nations, just like we have the threat of nuclear war keeping us in line. And then we have regular games, regular Olympics. The Olympics basically determines how much territory you keep, or whether or not it's time for you to no longer be a nation, whether or not it's time for you to conjoin with other nations. Of course, this puts pressure on smaller nations, but similar to the senator system, well, not similar to the senator system, but similar to, what am I saying? The best way to make this equal is to have a limited amount of representatives that can come from every country. So basically, you send your best of the best. It doesn't matter if you only have 24 citizens, as long as you have, 12 to send, 20 to send, you can compete. And of course, this also is going to bring into play like political games as to people trying to get rid of the others' best players so they can eventually assimilate their country and so they can no longer be recognized as a country. And people challenging the relevancy of a country despite the games not being played. Lots of things can come into play, even in a peaceful world. And in a peaceful world, especially, it encourages, intelligence to be put into schemes and systems and plans to try and gain more land or gain more power versus, we have the most powerful main character, the undead main character returned 1,000 years later. He, for no reason, has more power than everybody else, so he's going to defeat the nation, and our good nation is going to be the one that wins. You get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. I can't stand that shit. Anyway, we've kind of got a good idea of the planet. Of course, there's a ton of stuff that needs to be dwelt out or decided upon immediately. Like, for example, I haven't even said how advanced they are. Usually, it ranges from Dr. Stone to the most popular, medieval times, generic village type world to very advanced or modern society. And as much as I, don't like to submit to the norm, well, we don't have to do that. We don't have to make it like medieval. I think there should be I think it should be a relatively advanced society. Yeah, there we go. So it should be an advanced society that's heavily dependent on magic. So society's super advanced. They have like things that we could only dream of, but there's such a huge dependency on magic specifically that their actual technological advancements aren't that great. They haven't advanced that much in terms of their own personal ability to create things outside of the use and dependency on magic. And this is where our main character is going to come in at, right? So our main character is either going to be a one-liner or a zero-liner, and he is going to be completely focused on magic. Completely focused on science. He is going to be a disadvantaged main character because those are my favorite kind. And who knows, we might give him an extreme plot convenience. I think that we will. I have to think about that. Well, that's what we're doing here, so I'll think about this. But he's going to be relatively weak, and we'll say MC1. Because stealing from Death Note with this one, 2 intelligent characters head-to-head is better than 1 character head-to-head. So we know our MC1 is very weak. He generally doesn't have, as many tattoos as people in the rest of the world. MC2, on the other hand, of course, this will be our gifted generic protagonist for the people who are power hungry, for the people who just, ride and glaze anybody with ability or power or magic in the world. This is going to be the one for you. He's got the magical connection. He's in the ocean. He's had everything handed to him. Or maybe not. Maybe they're going to be twins that came up together. And just be very, very, very different from each other. Or maybe they'll meet at the academy. I think that's the best bet. I think we should make them meet at the academy. Of course, MC1 got in for his intelligence, for the things he created, for the way that he helped his community. So his entire community pushed him to be in the academy. Versus MC2 just being handed everything and being a bit of a snob, right? That's pretty generic. Way to categorize these two. But here's the thing. MC1, despite being pushed forward by his city, they also wanted him to just leave. Because our MC1 is, of course, going to be a villain, baby. He's, of course, going to be evil. Ridiculously evil at that. He's going to do things that will make certain people want to stop reading our book. That's that. I'm sorry to tell you. MC2, on the other hand, despite being snobbish and annoying, especially initially, it'll be revealed that he is indeed a generally good guy. He's arrogant because he has the power to be. but he's an okay human being. He's not going to be a stupid hero who sacrifices himself for literally nothing and expects the plot and the world to just save him over and over again. But he's going to be very strong and pretty morally just, especially compared to MC1. So not only was MC1 very weak, and he shouldn't have been the one pulling his weight around and bullying people, but he's doing that on top of just doing evil things that he personally desires to push forward, that he personally sees to manipulate or see forth, just because he wants to, just because he's a villain, because he can do that, because villains can do whatever they want and they never have to have justifications or reasons. Of course, we'll develop those, but he doesn't need them. He doesn't really need them. You know, he's smart. He can get things done. Whatever, blah 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 blah. And MC2, of course, is going to go directly against him. And the beautiful contrast that exists in stories like this, like Death Note, is the fact that we get to see two characters fighting from different angles, or in some ways similar. And we have one of the two to root for. So it's not just, oh, if you like extremely overpowered MCs, this is for you. And he'll be extremely strong, but he won't be like world breaking, at least initially, of course. And there's actually going to be a build up, which is why the planet is so small. There will definitely be people in these other continents and nations that make him know his place. And actually know his place. Not any magical plot armor that makes him magically win and decimate the opponents just because he's our character. And MC1 is going to be challenged at every single front. Another thing with villains is they have to be challenged. There have to be things that challenge and stop them. The MC, the hero protagonist, is the only one that gets the easy and free lunch. Villains never get the free lunch, and he wouldn't be able to be what he potentially is going to become without that, considering his magic is so incredibly weak. So both of our characters, despite one of them being pretty powerful, have reasons to gain more power. Because there are more powerful people in the world, and of course MC1 is going to be challenged consistently. In terms of his motivations, right? If we were to give a singular motivation to MC1, let's say that it's going to be the diminishing the value, diminishing the perceived value and acquiring absolute power. And he'll do this under the guise that, you know, people who are less magical shouldn't be discriminated against in society. Right? Kind of stealing from Mashley with that one. But in reality, he just desires power. He just wants to do whatever he wants, and he'd like himself to stand above all else, despite not having the power to literally do so. And then MC2, his motivations are going to be, let's make them very basic. Let's make them very human. MC2 wants the power to protect his family and serve his nation. Let's make him patriotic. Oh yeah, I like that. I actually like that a lot. Because it's going to be annoying. It's going to annoy all of us, you know, because extremely patriotic people, you know, they aren't evil at all. You know, they're just humans. But it can be very annoying when somebody is just, oh man, gung-ho about their nation standing 1,000 feet above the rest. So that would be interesting. That would be interesting. He literally just wants to serve his nation, you know, be somebody who's understood, known in his nation, be recognized for the power that he has, and protect the family that he either has currently or is planning on creating. So he's looking for a wife, you know, while he's at the academy, and while trying to increase his magical power. His studies slip in terms of the actual maths and sciences, but he's got the right heart. He's got a heart of gold, right? And our boy, on the other hand, he has a goal that is literally against the entire world. So not only does it need to be a secret, not only does it need to be held back, it doesn't need to be, you know, oh, the world doesn't need to be aware of this. It has to be a secret. But he also has horrible ambitions in terms of acquiring absolute power. He has these ambitions for his own reasons. And I also like very, very simple, selfish reasons for people wanting to do things. Whether you like it or not, protecting your family is a very selfish thing. The serve a nation part makes him pretty selfless. But this is pretty selfish. This is, of course, extremely selfish just because he was given a handicap in life. And he knows that if he continues to advance these sciences, maybe he can make a breakthrough. But I also want his motivation, or what he really just wants, or what he really likes personally, right? What he spends his downtime doing, to be very, very, very basic. Something very simple, something one-noted, something that is very against or very hypocritical comparative to his absolute aims and goals, right? In every ELLC, we'll say, in that book, the main character's motivations is shiny things and tasty things. I really like that. I can't think of what that could be right now, but I want it to be very, very basic. And this video has gone on for quite some time. I feel like we've developed quite the world. We have a lot of story to create, but I think this is a good size of a world, you know, to stand within. And of course, our MCs don't have faces. There are a bunch of questions about our magic system. I'm sure there are a bunch of holes, you know, in the plot and in the story before we even get going, just based off of how I created and generated this world. But you guys let me know, because this is an opportunity for us to actually create or envision a magical world that makes sense and is actually cool and isn't super generic, and where we can stump out any potential plot holes before they begin, before the story gets halfway in and we have to retcon something. So that's it for the video. Again, let me know. This was all off the top of the head, off the dome. Obviously you can tell with all the ums and pauses, but that's all. You have a good day. Let me know.